Five best tips for using your antivirus within your Fortigate. The first one, choose whether to use it in a flow-based mode or a proxy-based mode. You can see that in a flow-based mode, the features are quite limited, but moving into a proxy-based mode, you can see that you have much more options when using antivirus. The second tip, choose your database. There are actually three main databases that you can use within your Fortigate. There's a fourth one, which is a compact database, but you can use the config antivirus settings and set the different database. You can use the default database, the extended database, and in specific Fortigate modules, there's also the extreme database, which actually includes just about any signature. Our third tip is use grayware and heuristics. Now, when you scan using antivirus, the first step is to look for known signatures. The second step is to look for grayware. Grayware is not by definition a malware. It is an unsolicited program that usually downloads to your computer without you ever knowing about it. A good example is an adware. So how do you enable grayware? Again, config antivirus settings, set grayware. Now you can enable or disable. My tip, always make grayware enable. Alright, now for the fourth tip, use heuristics. Now what is heuristic? Heuristics, let's just, alright, let's config antivirus, but this time not settings, but heuristics. Now heuristics is actually an analysis of behavior, the way a file behaves. Now, Fortigate looks for different patterns, and if the file behaves in a suspicious way, you can determine what to do with it. Now you can set mode to pass the suspicious file, you can block the suspicious file, or you can disable the heuristic features. Now, why do you want to disable this feature? Because it adds up much more false positive events. So use it carefully. My fifth tip and the last tip is use hardware acceleration for antivirus scanning. Now, acceleration works only on the flow-based antivirus, not on the proxy one. And Fortigate models that features the MP4 or the MP6 can accelerate the antivirus processing to enhance performance. So use it by typing in your command line config IPS global, set npxl mode and choose none or basic. Basic actually enables the acceleration itself. And the last tip that I have for you guys is don't forget to subscribe to FortiTip. Let me show you the best application control tips for your Fortigate, and we start right now. To get more easy setup tips for your Fortigate firewall, subscribe now and don't forget to click on the bell notification and you won't miss anything. Application control scans your traffic, your network traffic for applications that you wish to control. Now it does so using the IPS, the Intrusion Prevention System engine, and its protocol decoders. Now, the order of the operation is quite significant. The first thing it scans is the application override, that is different signatures. The second thing is filter override, where you can group applications that have the same behavior, such as excessive bandwidth. And the last thing it does is scans for the different categories. So if you wish to block a category such as gaming, and yet you wish to enable a specific game such as the Battlefield game, you can do it. And let's just select the signature. And Fortigate will start by scanning application override. It will see that the Battlefield game is, let's make it allow, let's make it a monitor, in monitor mode. It will allow the game, still it will monitor it, keep logs of it, and then it will look for the filter overrides. Currently we don't have anything in the filter overrides, and then it will look at the categories where it will block any other game. When the IPS engine finds a match to an application, it tells your Fortigate that it found an application ID number. Now, Fortinet keeps a database of some thousands of applications. Each one has its own ID. If you wish to see the different IDs for the different application, you use the CLI, config application list, edit 0, config entries, edit 0, and then set application and a question mark. And now you can scroll between the different applications and their ID. The next tip may seem obvious, but I have seen cases where users created application control sensor and believed that it is globally enabled on any firewall policy. Well, that's not the case. Whenever you create an application sensor, name it, and then use it in your different policies, and the application sensor will be available only through that policy alone. Whenever you as an administrator block an application, don't forget that your users deserve an explanation why that application was blocked. So for an HTTP based application, you can use the replacement messages for HTTP based application. Make sure that it is enabled. Now, when you enable it, your users will get a blog page that will include the following information. The signature that detected the application, the signatures category, either gaming or peer-to-peer, the URL that was specifically blocked, the client source, that's the IP address of the client, and the server's destination. Now, another thing that the block page includes is the FortiGate's hostname and the UUID of the policy that was governing the traffic. It is good in an organization that you have many FortiGate devices. You can look up at the hostname of the FortiGate and tell which FortiGate actually blocked the traffic. Now our last tip, which we will include a specific video on it in the coming future, is traffic shaping. You can actually traffic shape any application and allocate guaranteed bandwidth or maximum bandwidth to that specific application. It can be your Netflix or whichever application you use the most. Now you configure a traffic shaper and you configure a traffic shaping policy. That traffic shaping policy can be determined on a specific policy and specific categories such as video and audio, where you can actually select different applications such as the Netflix application. Fortigate Captive Portal in 3 minutes. Here's how. To get more easy setup tips for your Fortigate firewall, subscribe now and don't forget to click on the bell notification and you won't miss anything. So you have outsourced employees connected to one of your interfaces and you wish to restrict the access to the network. What do? You use Captive Portal. How? Here's how. The first thing to do is to create a new user group, a user group that is dedicated to those outsourced employees. So let's create one. Let's use the guest as our user group, and let's use email as a method to deliver the password for that captive portal. The expiration of the account is 4 hours, but you can change it. That's the first step. The second thing to do is to create an administrator that is responsible only for the provisioning of the guest accounts. So let's use my name, let's use a password, and let's restrict that admin for guest accounts for the outsourced employees. Now, the third thing to do is to head over to that interfaces that our employees will connect through. And let's move over to the security mode. Let's choose, usually it is none. Now, we will use Captive Portal. We will restrict it to that outsourced employee group. And we finish the third step. Let's create a policy that will allow outsourced employees to get into the network, and outsource EMP. The incoming interface is the interface of the outsourced employees. The outgoing is our WAN. Source will be all and will be outsourced employee user group. Destination is all. Service is all. All right. Now let's log out and let's get into the new admin page that will allow us to create password for those employees. Now let's use my email, and Fortigate will generate a password that we can print it out or send it via email. Now if we log out again and enter with our super admin credentials, we will see that in our user group, we already have one member, which is the member that we have sent the password to that email. Hey everyone, this is the second part of how certificates work. We will unleash the mystery of certificate, and in this part we will look at asymmetric encryption. Well, asymmetric encryption works using a key pair, two different keys that are related mathematically. Now, one key, which is the private key, should be kept safe. That's the secret key. The second key is a public key. Anyone can use it, anyone can look at it. You can encrypt using the private key or using the public key. You cannot encrypt and decrypt using the same key. You have to use the second pair in order to encrypt or decrypt. Now, we will look at OpenSSL and how do we generate a key pair. One is a private key and the second one is the public key. But the beauty of asymmetric encryption or using a key pair is the fact that they're not only used in encryption, they are also used to authenticate the identity of the second peer. A server that wishes to have a digital certificate must generate a key pair. It must generate a public key and a private key. There are different algorithms that will allow it to do so. We will use RSA. Now we'll use OpenSSL, GenRSA, and let's name our key pair. Let's name it Fortigate, and let's contain it in a PM format, which is a container that will include both keys. And let's decide that the size of the keys will be 2048 bit. And that's about it. Now, if we wish to see both the public key and the private key, to inspect them individually, we can do so using the following command: OpenSSL RSA. Let's insert the file that we have just created, fortigate.pm, and let's get the public key out of it, and let's name it mykey.pub. All right, it's writing it. Let's see how it looks. Let's open the key, and that's our public key. Now, if we wish to see the private key, we can use the following command: and that's the private key. So we have a public key and a private key, and those two are used when a server requests a certificate using a certificate signing request. It sends the public key as a part of its information. We will look later on how a certificate authority takes that information and actually creates a digital certificate plus a digital signature that will prove that he or it is the one that it claims to be. Hey everyone, back to Fortigate certificate, and in this part 3 we will look at hash functions. Now, what is a hash function? A hash function is a mathematical function that takes any input and produces a hash value. Now, the hash value is always in a fixed size according to the hash function that was used. The hash value is also called a digest, and it should be impossible to produce the same value for two different inputs. So the function is actually collision free. Now, a hash function must be quick. It has to produce the hash value very fast, and a slight change on the input should change the entire hash value completely. So even if we have a 1 GB file full of text and we change a comma in one of the sentences, the hash value will change completely. So we have the input, we have the hash function, and we have the digest, the hash value. Now, when do we use it? We use it for integrity. Whenever we send a file, it can be just about any file, and we want to check its integrity, that no one touched it, no one tampered with the bit stream. We make a hash value out of the file, and then on the other side we compare the same file using the same hash function. If the two hash values are the same, then no one tampered with the file. If the hash value changes, then someone probably touched the file. There are dozens of hash functions that are used just about anywhere. When a web server stores passwords in its database, they are being hashed. They are being hashed using different hash functions such as the SHA-256 or the SHA-512. To make the hash stronger, we also use what is known as a salt. We generate random numbers to be added to the password itself, and thus the hash value will be much more difficult to guess. Now the term guessing is the right term, since hashes are in no way an encryption technique. They are not used for encryption. They are only a mathematical function, a one-way mathematical function that takes an input, turns it into another value, and there's no way back. They are not reversible. Alright, so enough with that. Let's move over to OpenSSL. Let's reproduce some hashes out of different inputs. And at the end, that will probably be part 4 of the series. We will recap what we have learned by now. That is symmetric encryption, asymmetric encryption, and hash functions. And we will look at certificate, a digital certificate, and understand how it all matches. Alright, so we'll use OpenSSL, but let's start out by using the echo command. And let's write down some text. I have a secret message. Alright, now let's grab it into OpenSSL. And let's use MD5. MD5 is a hash function that produces a 128-bit value. Now that's the hash value of that text. Now if I'll use the same text, but I'll change the E to an A, you'll see that I get another hash value, completely different hash value. Let's go back to the same text, and it will produce the same hash value as before. Now if we will use the SHA-256 hash function,